Okay, so today is the 1st of February 2022, and we'll talk about Mario Bellini, who is, I think, 86 years old today. It is his birthday. Let's wish him a happy birthday, Mario Bellini. Now 87, he is 87 years old today. Mario Bellini, born on February 1st, 1935 in Milan, is an Italian architect and designer. He graduated from Milan Polytechnic Faculty of Architecture in 1959 and began working as an architect himself in the early 1960s. He is the winner, among others, of 8 Compasso d'Oro and prestigious architecture awards, including the Medaglia d'Oro conferred on him by the President of the Italian Republic. Like many other Italian architects, his activities range from architecture and urban planning to product and furniture design. And I'm afraid here I don't have examples or too many examples of his furniture design. And this is he's giving, but maybe next time. This is the man. He's 87 years old, and he built, and he continues to build, and we'll see some of his buildings. He became very famous through his designs, his furniture designs. I look at his scarf around his neck, and I'm always envious of the way Europeans. Of course, I could mimic. I could place a scarf around my neck just as he does. But I always felt somehow as not being myself. The Europeans, I mean, Romania is part of Europe, but still, I'm not at ease with doing what he's doing so naturally, and not just him, but also the French and other West Europeans. They are very, very good at, they are very convincing using these, scarves around their necks. Anyway, here he is with a smile, which in my opinion says a lot about both him and his architecture. We'll look at the buildings very soon. Mario Bellini. Some drawings by Mario Bellini. Again, he is 87 years old today on February 1st, 2022. Now, what do we see in this drawing? Well, in my opinion, we see a dreamer. This is from 2015, so from 7 years ago. At 80, so he did this drawing, this sketch, being 80 years old. Well, this is exactly connected with what I just talked about earlier, that now within the restrictions of the pandemic, we can dream. This is what Mario Bellini drew at 80 without a pandemic. But what I mean is, obviously, this is an utopian kind of drawing or sketch, and he did it. And I think such sketches can be done by anyone who studied architecture, and even by anyone who didn't study architecture, if that one has preoccupations in this field. This is the base for a table which he actually built. Tavolo. A chair. He built a lot of pieces of furniture. Here we have a sketch about the Tokyo Design Center, which he actually built, and which unfortunately I decided not to include in the presentation. At one moment, I confess, I became a little bit tired of his works, and I shouldn't say so, but that's what I felt. I will try to explain why a little bit later. Anyway, we see here drawings pendulating between design and architecture, and they don't actually contradict each other so much, although a chair is an object, and in my opinion, a building is more than an object. Although some people call a building an object. But I think a building is more than an object. Interesting, these spirals here. He has a certain level of complexity which is not to be overlooked. Mario Bellini, architecture, design, and more. Architettura, design, altro, Italian beauty. Now we start this insufficient presentation because I don't show some of his works, and now I'm beginning to regret already, but I will show some works by him. The thermoelectric power plant of Cassano, the office building, 1985-1990. New office in Cassano. This is a building which was built at that time when what we call postmodernism was ravaging the world of architecture and design. It still has a certain vigor, and you know, as such, it transcends the limits of what we call postmodernism. Mario Bellini. I mean, he was and is obviously an architect. You can tell from the way he, you know, plays with the parts of the building, the way they articulate. This requires, you know, some knowledge and also some specific traits or that the architect has. A rhythmicity, and there is a composition here which maybe you know, what we call architecture without architects would not have arrived at, which is maybe a good thing sometimes, at least sometimes. I admire architecture without architects, as opposed to Lebbeus Woods, who thought that architecture is not possible without architects. I'm not sure at all about that. And you know, Dogon village in Africa, in Mali, is a clear proof of that. But there are many other proofs of that. But here it is, you know, without doubt, we are dealing with an architect in his sketches, and you know, his you know, the certain triumphalism of the entrance into this complex of buildings. There is an architect here, for the better or the worse. Now, Villa Erba Exhibition and Congress Center in Cernobbio, Como, in 1986-1990, again, that period which was affected by the tempest we call postmodernism. Villa Erba International Exhibition and Convention Center. Here it is. He was and is capable of working with, you'll see later, even more complex, you know, surfaces. And here is a little bit moderate in that sense, but that's because at that time there were no computers in the design offices. There was also, as we see in this picture, a certain attraction towards centrality, the coherence of centrality and the circle. But there are qualities, of course. It's just that you know, this there was something static, you know, in the aesthetics of postmodernism. Maybe I talk now from the perspective of deconstruction, because as Patrick Schumacher said, and he might have been right, there were two intermediate phases between the several kinds of modernism and the several kinds of parametricism. Patrick Schumacher created a list with the so-called styles of modernity, beginning with the the beginning of the 20th century. Modernism with 5 or 6 so-called styles, then 2 intermediary or transitory styles. He uses the word style. I would stay away from that word, but he uses it. Postmodernism and deconstruction. And then he thought another list of styles follows, and that is the styles connected with parametricism. The last one, when he made this statement, being tectonism. Now, the postmodernism, maybe I perceive postmodernism because I had been already, I shouldn't use the word infected by the virus of deconstruction. I was affected by deconstruction, and now this kind of centrality that we see here, I find a little bit problematic from the perspective of the deconstructivist, but I used it myself in my own work. So there is maybe a regressive side within me. You see it here, and you can see it in his work as well. He's capable of fragmentation, not really deconstruction, although later on he arrives at interesting forms of fluidity that belong to our time. But this kind of almost classicist centrality is something that the very modern, the contemporary ones are kind of trying to avoid. Or even this part here, it's a little bit I don't know how to describe it, convenient, uncomfortable aesthetically, but still, I shouldn't be too stingy now with the praises. I felt like saying it's still acceptable. But the word acceptable would probably insult him. And I don't want to insult him, especially on his birthday. But there are here things that one wouldn't do today. But at that time, or this would be difficult to sustain today. But at the end of the 20th century, it was possible. I still find these works a little bit, dated, so to speak, because of these postmodern touches. But here we see already, the appearance of a certain disorder, so to speak, or fluidity, which announces what he would do later. But forget the building. Let's look at the trees. If we look at these trees, what do we think? What do we feel? They are magnificent, are they not? They are magnificent. How are we going to build to honor these trees? Yes, I think that's why I got a little bit tired of his work, because of such works, which are, they are dated, they are postmodern in good measure, and still also this belief in composition. I know that, until recently, the architect created compositions, but that is difficult to sustain today, or at least for someone like me. But look at the landscape here. My God, where is this? If I saw these mountains, I would have thought this is in China. But what I see here now, it's Europe. Anyway, the world is beautiful and could be even more beautiful if we didn't. If we don't act so often foolishly. Yokohama Business Park. Now we are in Japan, also 1987, 1991. Here again, we see the same kind of architecture affected by, by postmodernism. I have a bitter taste in my mouth when I look at this. It's too sweet, and the references maybe to Villa Adriana, or I don't know. I became an adversary of postmodernism. In fact, I was when it was. I even published against it at the time when it was very fashionable and admired. It's something about postmodernism which turns me off. This domestic, this I don't know how to describe it. This suspiciously comfortable dialogue with history, from where we borrow undiscriminately and without digesting history. It's again, it's here a type of ideality which to me is not quite convincing. It's rather decorative. But if we look around, I mean, it's a huge complex. You look at these houses. This is a house. This is also a house. Well, a public building, but the difference in scale is stunning. Yokohama. Fortunately, we have this person here with the umbrella running, so there is something that fights off the static, composition. So there is something dynamic there. Now, the new museum of the city of Berlin in Germany, 2008. No, this is wrong. Sorry. I'm sorry. From here, I added new materials. The thing is, I had a presentation on him because I presented him 1 or 2 years ago. I couldn't find it. So I added new works today. And I wanted to show a few images of his museum for the city of Berlin, but which was not built. It is on the top of the list with his best architectural works on his Wikipedia page. But it's just a project, a competition project, and I chose not to show it. So please forgive me. This title here, this naming is wrong. What I'm going to show is this contribution to the Louvre Museum in Paris, where he created the house, so to speak, for Islamic art, and I think it's a good project. It's this is one of his best works, in my opinion. At least from the outside, no, but from the inside as well. I like the fact that he was courageous to propose something like this in the courtyard of the Louvre. And, he realized this surface impeccably, technically speaking, and this was not easy. And we are going to see images of people disassembling it, and or during the construction of it, or maybe during the cleaning of it. It's very complex. And again, you cannot do something like this with a T-square and a rectangle. For this, you need a computer. Although Kenneth Frampton, for example, told me that the computer. Hello? Please turn off the microphone. I hear a noise in the back. Thank you. So he said that the computer destroyed architecture. I don't think so. I mean, valuable things were created, and I'm not a technocrat, but I think valuable things had been created thanks to the computer. Without it, this could not have been done. This is for sure. It cannot be done. And it was done thanks to a technology he had at his disposal. It's very accurate, it's very rigorous, and yet it is also floating, and it's flowing. And I think in this courtyard, he brought in some fluidity that perhaps was needed. In my opinion, this is better than the glass pyramid by I.M. Pei. The glass pyramid has, of course, a more emphatic position at the Louvre, but that glass pyramid, especially seen from the inside, could have been an airport, or, well, this could have been a part of an airport as well. It's true. But here at least you have harmony through contrast. There with the glass pyramid, which in itself is perhaps to an extent at least questionable. Should a pyramid be made of glass? The traditional, so to speak, pyramids are not made of glass. In fact, they are the very opposite of glass. They are opaque, they are blank. They give you the impression they cannot be accessed. So to make a pyramid of glass, to me, is a little bit problematic. Just as you make, as Sir Norman Foster made a dome above the Reichstag, also of glass, also transparent, as some kind of an homage or expression of democracy. But there is a little bit of demagogy, in my opinion. If you want to express democratic realities or concerns, in my opinion, you don't use the pyramid. I mean, even the word pyramidal structure. A pyramidal structure is a structure which uses hierarchies. And in a way, it's, I mean, who is at the top of the pyramid? The pyramid has a top. So to talk about democracy, making a pyramid with glass is to me a little bit problematic. But to come back to Mario Bellini, I truly think he did a good work here at the Louvre. Here he is, the architect, underneath this floating surface. Now the interior, I don't know. I mean, probably is pleasant underneath, and the you know, the objects, the artifacts are displayed properly. I'm not so sure about this column here. It's a little bit, I don't know. It's okay, I guess, but a little bit predictable and even a little bit commercial. But I like this covering here with its fluidity and a rigorous fluidity, if I am to call it so. And it's also the reference to the tent. Well, if we are to connect Islam with the Arab world, you know, it's the reference to the tent, I think, is an appropriate one. Well, the fact that he's also, you know, an accomplished designer made him pay minute attention to the smallest detail here. And so this was executed impeccably. From the outside, it seems somehow simple if you don't consider the undulating surface. It's coherent, it's, you know, has a level of unity which is undisputable. But when you think how this was made, how it was built, and we are going to see pictures during the construction of this. Now we see here two opposing forms of sensibility. The old Louvre, the new Louvre, you know, and times changed, and it's good that they changed. It's good. I mean, we cannot build today like this. We can't. It's not appropriate for our time to be like this. As Maria Olbrich wrote on the facade of the secessionist building in Vienna, to each time its art, and to art its freedom. So this belongs to our time. Maybe too explicitly, because many people work kind of in this way. But I still think Mario Bellini did a good work here at the Louvre, and this is one of his best works in architecture. It's like a blanket that covers at a certain height the courtyard of the Louvre. You can imagine the tremendous calculations, which again, without the computer would not have been possible, because all these triangles are have different dimensions, subtly different. You cannot here play games, so to speak. You have to be very rigorous, and this cannot be done in the absence of the machine. And look at this. This is woven in a very sophisticated way, and it's still light. He literally brought in the courtyard of the Louvre a woven fabric. You know, it's a woven. It's a blanket, a techno blanket, but it's done very, very well, and it probably functions. The water doesn't get to the Islamic art that is displayed underneath. A good work by Mario Bellini. And here we see these things, they open maybe to allow for different conditions of light or to be cleaned underneath. We are going to see more images. It's a mechanism, but it's a mechanism impeccably constructed. Of course, you need a qualified personnel to take care of this. But as you can see, the French provided that qualified personnel. This is why I keep saying, in today's world, you cannot stay away from the tools of today's world. They exist, the softwares, the programs, the computer, and so on. Some people are very sophisticated, you know, others still postpone accessing this attribute of our time. I don't think it's time to postpone. No, no. You know, Mario Bellini was born 87 years ago. You know, he was born before the Second World War, but he assumed the technology of today with an, you know, with openness, because again, you cannot belong to the present by turning your back on the present. And you know, in as much as we feel tempted to criticize the present, and there are reasons to criticize it, there are also positive aspects to the present. You know, certain things that are done today could not have been done at other times. For example, this one. Which is more impressive, what we see here or what we see here? I think both are impressive in different ways. The people who built the old Louvre couldn't build like this and envisioned it like this. Maybe we cannot, I don't know, we might be able to draw and conceive something like this, but it's not what we feel like doing in the present, in the 21st century. Imagine how this was built. I mean, each piece is, all these triangles are slightly different, dimensionally speaking, and they must function perfectly in order to allow for, I don't know, cleaning, or I don't know exactly what he's doing here. You know, maybe this open to, again, allow for different conditions of light underneath, or for some cleaning, maintenance, or both. This is a work done by human hands like mine and yours. But, you know, I think we can admire and applaud these human hands and the human ingenuity, and Mario Bellini, who conceived this work. You know, this was done through work, through struggles, through calculations. not ignoring, the fluidity and the aesthetical appeal of what he built here. This is done with fragments, from fragments, but all reclaiming themselves a center, a unity. And the unity exists, is what keeps together all these fragments, all these triangular fragments into this, techno rug or techno blanket in the courtyard of the Louvre. Mario Bellini. During construction. I mean, it doesn't matter how one might be inclined pessimistically towards our world, we can still admire, the work that we see here. The ingenuity, the complexity, the rigor, the technology, all this human effort, collective effort. Look, here is a forest of metallic elements. They all had to work together, to come together in a functioning way, and they do. I mean, I imagine that Claude Perrault, who designed the eastern facade of the Louvre, would have liked this work, because I think the architects of the past, if they lived in the present, they would have built in similar ways, not like they built, some centuries ago. I am absolutely sure that if Andrea Palladio was born today, or in the 20th century, if he lived, if he was our contemporary, he would not have built like he built, in the 16th century. He would have built kind of in this way. I'm sure of it. He would have worked with very technological means, because this is proper to our time. Is this less impressive than La Rotonda? I don't know. I don't think it is less impressive, no. It's impressive in a different way. The Louvre, Mario Bellini. I mean, you look at this and there are no supports, or very, very, very few inside. This is literally, it's floating, it's like a magic carpet. Which landed in the courtyard of the Louvre, the courtyard of the French kings. Okay, now we look at the Milano Convention Center, also by Mario Bellini, and he did another good work, and I think he's good at manipulating these contorted fluidities. Look at this. It was built. Well, I don't know about this. We talked a little bit about this, and we saw it in previous work. This kind of it's a remnant from the aesthetics of the end of the 20th century. I think I understand he wanted to create a contrast. You know, maybe here we have some kind of a postmodernism and some kind of a deconstructivism, although it's not really deconstructivism here. But I think this surface that he created and which was built greatly, beautifully, is belongs more to our time. Here we also have the cylinder of circulation, or the spiraling of the of circulation, but here it's more justified than here, because here is about function literally, but here it's something else. Anyway, forget this part. I think this blanket that he built here is well built, and brings in that folded architecture that that somehow belongs to our time. Although what we see underneath here reminds us of that first work that I showed. So there are conflicts here, you know. This one connects with what's going on here, and then the blanket has a certain similarity to what we saw in the courtyard of the Louvre. So that the blanket is here. And he built all this. It's a large convention center in Milan, or Milano. Mario Bellini. A sketch. Bernard Tschumi used to say that the best architecture is fireworks. Well, here we are not dealing with fireworks, but imagine, you know, making such a sketch and then trying to transform it into a built work. It's not easy. He did it. I mean, maybe this kind of sketch more people would be able to do, but to transform this into a built work, that's another thing. In a way, it relates to what I said before. Quoting from Brâncuș, is one thing to see far away, and it's another thing to arrive there. Here again, you know, it's one thing to make this sketch, it's another thing to actually build it. And he built it. You know, here, you know, how do you build this? Well, you can wrinkle a piece of paper. Yes, anyone can do it. But how do you transform it into a very large space and into a very large roofing? He did it, and you see it here. And it's well, this is a rendering, but even in reality, so to speak, it looks close. Not so ethereally and beautifully, perhaps, but still convincing. This was, in a way, the conceptualization of that manual sketch that he did. And the gracefulness of it maybe is not totally present in the finalized work, but an approximation of it exists. It's a return, it's a revenge of the textile work. It's a revenge, it's a return of the fabric. It's a return of weaving, because we see here the insinuation of so-called old style or old world architecture with walls and small windows. What we see here is something that it was never done in architecture previously, meaning, you know, before the end of the 20th century. Who would have conceived such a, you know, floating roofing above any building? No, it was done in the present, and thanks to the technology that we have. Otherwise, this would not have been done. But on the other hand, there are some influences here in his work. I think he was a little bit susceptible to certain influences, some of them rather obvious, like here we see, but this is, you know, almost unavoidable. maybe, I mean, Daniel Lipskind, Eric Miralles, these scattered things on the floor. I don't know if they were built like this in the end. Here we have again, a touch of postmodernism, a touch of deconstructivism, and then this floating blanket, techno blanket, is maybe some kind of a negotiation between the two about the deconstruction of here and the postmodernism of here, if we are to call it so. But again, it was built, and here it is. We look at these slides here, and the reference to the Jewish Museum in Berlin by Daniel Lipskind is for all to see. Again, it's difficult to be totally so-called yourself without allowing for some influences to come in. Is this furniture by Mario Bellini? I think it is. Anyway, the furniture, in my opinion, this one is a little bit burlesque. The building has even a certain austerity seen from here. What I like the most is the blanket, the techno blanket, as I call it. It doesn't matter how fluid he can be, and he has an attraction to an even ability in the field of fluidities, but we still see, even in the employment of certain furniture, a flirtation, so to speak, with static aspects of design and architecture as well. Yes, the most impressive, again, and you probably would agree, is this, as I call it, techno blanket, which is, I think beautifully crafted and impressive aesthetically. In Milan, Mario Bellini, who is 87 years old today. Happy birthday, Mario Bellini. In an abstracted way, this also symbolizes, in a way, the return of nature. Here we see insinuations of our static, centralized conception about what an architect should do. And now nature somehow comes back to us, to haunt us, even we build a second nature technologically, but it's also the return to unpredictability, of spontaneity, of a different kind of aesthetics. And I think our present is rather fond of what's going on here, and less about what is going on here. Why is it so? Well, for various reasons. Maybe our life is too, until the pandemic was very conditioned, and maybe still is, by rigid schedules and so on, and we need forces that oppose that rigidity, and that's what we see here in this roofing is claiming a territory of freedom which maybe in our lives we don't have too much of. Maybe our lives are probably more in the spirit of what's going on here, order, structure, rigidity, masculinity, and then we have the fluidity of the above, in a way, the femininity of the above. This could also be almost like an probably unconscious, but who knows, feminist statement is the return of the woman, of femininity. This is the male and this is the female, and the female is asserting her her role, and does so, I would say, in a more interesting and engaging, it could be seen as a disturbing presence, yes, but I think we need badly this disturbance. Look at this angularity, the masculinism of a geometry without too much sensitivity. It's harsh. And then we have the assault of the opposing force, the feminine force, which takes over. That's how I feel tempted to interpret this. Of course, the work was done by the same person. Maybe he has these dualities within himself. Zaha Hadid, who herself promoted fluidity, has 2 books that were published by the Institute of Architecture in Vienna, where she taught for almost 20 years. And there are 2 books with works by her students. One is called Total Fluidity, and the other one is called Fluid Totality. In both cases, you have the word fluid or fluidity. You also have the word total or totality. In a way, the duality between totality and fluidity is seen in this work by Mario Bellini as well. Unfortunately, this part still bothers me, because this is, I'm so glad that this roofing is fighting off both this part and this part. It's like assaulting them because it doesn't believe in them, and there is war here between this techno blanket as an expression of femininity. I would say this is not the revenge, the return, the reply, the revolt even of the road not taken, of the repressed, the return of the repressed, maybe the unconscious, I don't know, but we need badly this, in my opinion. We had too much of this and too much of this. We need a feminization of architecture, and this is one way to do it. This is still a conflictual state, because you have 2 systems at war here. It's a dichotomical architecture. I feel like chopping off this thing, really, myself, with some tools. I dislike this more and more the more I look at it. Fortunately, there is the feminine techno blanket, which is suggesting that soon this will be covered to this nonsensical, bombastic, circular nonsense. I really dislike this. It's almost a parody, actually. I wonder what he felt when he did it. More than what's going on here. Okay, here is a primitive masculinism, but this is a different kind of masculinism. It's an inflating masculinism, which is not primitive, is so-called educated, and it's so emphatic and at the same time so ridiculous. Thanks to this roofing, this is beautiful. I really like it. In Milan, Mario Bellini, 87 years old, architect and designer today, 87 years old. And look at this opening here, it's dramatic, it's majestic, it's infuriatingly other. It's the opposite of the L'Arc de Triomphe. In a way, what we see here is the covering of L'Arc de Triomphe by Christo in Paris. And this is done by an architect, and the covering is partial, and is not only a temporary mask. It's part of the work for all to see for as long as the building exists. I don't know when he built this, but I think it's in the 21st century. He was already, over 70 years old when he did this. At an age when most people are retired, this man was reinventing himself. And this is exactly what a creator is supposed to do. If he is to move towards that youthfulness that Le Corbusier said, you arrive at in time, you become young, you do not remain young. That's what Le Corbusier said. The problem in life is not to remain young, but to become young. Now, Taipei Pop Music Center is a project from 2009, which was not built yet. I don't know if it will. It has some similarities to the project in Milan that we saw that was built. Is this work here, quite large, I mean long, and of course he is not the only one who worked or works with the idea of building mountains, green mountains. But he does it, I mean, the project has a certain level of seductiveness. More, I would say, on the left side than on the right side. This slice of a mountain to me is a little bit problematic, but anyway, it was not built. I mean, it's like a chopped off mountain or hill, or it's not convincing. Here it has, it's like a wild green animal. He is very good, in my opinion, at manipulating these surfaces, these, as I call them, well, in this case, is a green blanket or techno green blanket. In Taipei, pop music center, but it was not built. Bjarke Ingels, as you know, has such creations as well, and other architects. We are trying desperately to bring back to our world the mountains we flattened, or the nature that we flattened or we killed, to express myself more brutally. Heatherwick now is proposing, in South Korea, something he proposed and built actually in New York, some kind of an Edenic park on water. But to do that, you need a concrete platform. And to me, that is perverse and even very disputable because, you know, we know concrete pollutes. So, you know, you create some kind of an artificial paradise on water, but in order to do it, you need to have a concrete platform, and that concrete platform, we know what it means. It's a violence to, you know, to air, to oxygen, and even to water. It seems we cannot abstain from massacring. I don't know. It doesn't sound too good to massacre. You understand? To torture the earth. And the architect is very, very busy at doing it. We are torturing the earth. This could be a new definition of the architect, the torturer of the earth. It is through us that the earth is tortured. Let's confess, let's say it's true. I mean, how many buildings really are sensitive towards the earth? Not many, very few. Most of them are actually impositions on the earth and thus tortures of the earth. Maybe on the diploma of the architect should be written, you know, XY architect, and underneath in parentheses, or even without parentheses, torturer of the earth. And we will not stop. The pandemic will not make us stop. The climate change will not make us stop. The melting icebergs will not make us stop. We will not stop. It looks splendid now, and here we have fireworks and all the lights are on. But do you imagine how much pollution all this electricity on produces just in one tower? And look here. I remember when I arrived in New York as an immigrant and I saw New York City from the airplane. It was the first time I used an airplane. And at night, I arrived at night and I saw New York from the air at night. And I just couldn't believe my eyes. I was close to the window. So much electricity, the megalopolis. And here, look here, you know, in Taipei, you know, I think in Taipei, yes. You know, I mean, just here, just in this so-called small fragment of the world, is an incredible abuse of the world through electrical generation and production and consume. Just here, imagine the whole world. And then we complain or we are surprised that we have no winter and that the climate is changing. Well, of course it is changing. Look at the highway here with these lights generated. Well, we don't see too many cars here, but in reality, there are many more cars. I guess Mario Bellini was tired, or his co-workers, to place too many cars here. Under normal, so-called normal conditions, this would be filled with cars. Cars after cars after cars, frenetically moving. And electricity, of course. So we try to transform the night into day. Well, we transformed it, but with what price? And yes, of course, entertainment is the king of our time, because the more restrictive our working days, boring as they are from 9 to 5, the more we need entertainment. We need this, because we would die without this. We would die. Thanks to it, we have the week divided in two parts, the working days and the playing days. And we have this, the pop center in Taiwan, in Taipei. And we have the musicians there, or the dancers on both. And then we have the multitude of people not wearing masks, because this project was done before the pandemic. Now, of course, things are a little more difficult, but again, maybe COVID is telling us to change certain things. You know, maybe this very idea of this mega center is not sustainable any longer. If the climate change didn't convince us, maybe COVID will, maybe, although I'm not sure. I'm not saying, I mean, myself, I wish I was here between these people, you know. But look at the fetishization of this poor trembling singer. I was writing yesterday to someone, how do you explain that the king of pop and the king of rock and the queen of silver screen sensuality, they all died in the same way, in their own vomit, in their own bathroom? And I'm talking about Elvis Presley, the king of rock. I'm talking about the king of pop, Michael Jackson. And I'm talking about Marilyn Monroe, the queen of silver screen sensuality. They all died in the same way, young, in their own bathroom, in their own vomit. How do you explain it? Well, because Elvis Presley and Michael Jackson and Marilyn Monroe were humans just like us. They were trembling, they had fears, they had nightmares, they were overwhelmed, maybe by their own success. And this populace is transforming them in the superheroes to replace the gods that we killed. We killed the gods on Mount Olympus, and we placed on Mount Olympus, the mental Mount Olympus, Michael Jackson, Elvis Presley, Marilyn Monroe. We cannot live without these fetishizations. We need them badly to connect with the above, with the gods that we actually killed. Well, now we can't even do this because, of course, it's difficult to have this multitude of people in the middle of a pandemic. Look at these adoring fans here. You know, it's like this man who is like me and you, trembling himself and probably feeling very alone. These people are projecting onto him, into him, their own ideality and idealism, the need for an otherness, for even they talk about the metaverse. Somebody said that the metaverse is actually, the metaverse always existed because always existed another world, the world of religion, the world of mythology, the world of fables, the world of legends, the world of rock stars and pop stars. You know, we need them. It's not, they in themselves, they are not so valuable. It's what we project into them. The desire of otherness, of eternity, of incandescence, of exuberance. An exuberance you cannot have at work from 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, unfortunately. Look at this. It's almost a phantasmagoria, but we need these phantasmagorias to keep us sane, in the sense that that part of ourselves which is not expressed might have a chance to express itself indirectly through these performers in specific times, specific days. And now we go, I think this is the last project I showed by Mario Bellini, and it's still a project. Sheikh Zayed National Museum in Abu Dhabi was not realized. It's a project, as you can see. But here we see again the dichotomic pair. We see the female and we see the male. The male is also himself problematized by these fragmentations, but is still aggressive, if I can call him so. I think these dualities express a schism and the duality that exists within Mario Bellini, and not just in him, of course. It exists in me too, and that's why, it is said, the mystics say, we do not see things as they are, we see things as we are. But I think they exist also outside of who we are. What we see in this project is not very different from what we saw earlier in Milan, in the convention center, and even some previous works, except that here, these towers, which might remind one a little bit of the towers of San Gimignano, which also influenced and inspired, and I would say in a more inspiring way, Louis Kahn. They are present here in this project for Abu Dhabi, which was not realized. I wonder what he's thinking about. And I think this is the last image of this imperfect and preliminary presentation, so to speak, because it could be amplified on Mario Bellini as well. Thank you. And happy birthday, Mario.